Welcome, everyone, to the With Grace podcast. I am so thrilled to have my friend, a wonderful human being, someone I deeply respect and adore, Justin Castelli, with me here today to dive into conversation on so many things. He and I first met through our mutual friend, Matt Ziegler, and I had the honor of being a guest on his podcast a few months ago. And so I'm thrilled to finally be able to bring him here today to continue our conversation on so many things, whether that be authenticity, whether that be alignment, whether that be synchronicity, whether it be about the paths in our lives, and the search that I think we are both constantly on.
The
So welcome,
pursuit, the
Justin.
pursuit.
The pursuit. Yes, the
Yes.
pursuit. Thank you so much for joining us. And just FYI for everyone, so Justin came into the Kizuna Studio community this morning to give an extraordinary masterclass on aligning finances with the authentic life. And the community is just all abuzz right now. Just so thrilled with all the insights that he shared. So he and I have been spending quite some time today, and I'm so lucky that he is joining us again this afternoon. And that masterclass, Justin, I got to tell you, so many things that you said just sparked, all these tangents that I kind of want to explore with you
hmm
today. But I want to start off with, I think, you and I are certainly one area in which we're deeply aligned is certainly this idea of authenticity, which to your point that you made earlier today, marketers, and I'm a marketer, so I'm a bit embarrassed about this. Marketers have kind of co-opted to such a point that it's, oftentimes it loses its meaning. But I know that this is deeply important to you. It is also deeply important to me. And kind of wanted to start off this conversation by asking, when did that realization, when did you feel that calling, that authenticity and this idea of the authentic life is such a deeply driven mission for you? Like, was there a particular moment? I don't think we've ever talked about this before.
So I would say the obsession with the authentic life, we'll say that's in the last, let's maybe say 2 years. But I can look back over time, and authenticity and being authentic, I think, has been with me my whole life. So like this realization, I think, is a little bit why I'm starting to believe that maybe we have multiple experiences in life, just different versions, because there's something that has been ingrained with me that has always been with me that I don't think is natural to everybody. And I think maybe it's a past experience that I learned the value of authenticity and what it really is that brought it to me with this version of life. So I'm exploring that. But anyways, back to your original question. Authentic life in the last couple of years. But the reason I say my whole life is that I have always had the confidence in myself to show up the way that I wanted to. And just little things like in high school, like fashion. And so an example, it seems silly, but it all adds up over time. When I was in high school, I want to say maybe my sophomore year. So this would have been 1998, 97, somewhere around there. In the fashion world, and Indiana is behind the times in fashion, like the turtleneck sweaters were starting to come back in style. But I was like the first one in high school to wear it, and people would make fun of me, and like I didn't care. And I always thought, like, if you're making fun of what I wear, then I'm wearing something. I'm doing the right thing, because like I don't want to dress like everybody else. But I was confident enough, and I felt fine, and that was me just being me and not worrying about it. And then like the next big example is being in the world of finance. There is an image of a financial advisor that exists, a stereotype. A white male, which I fit that, but beyond that, it's like suits and proper and like I did that for a while, and I didn't feel as if I was being inauthentic, but it just like if I had the choice, I wouldn't show up that way. So when I started my firm back in 2015, I stopped showing up that way and showed up the way that I wanted to. And again, fashion is silly, but it's an example I think we can all relate to. I remember the first conferences I went to after starting my firm. Everybody's there is in suits, and I'm there with Jordans on and a graphic t-shirt. Like part of my goal in going there was to piss off the old guys because I wasn't conforming. So I think that like I've always wanted to do things my way, whether that's right or wrong, and and show up the way I want to. So that's always been with me. The authentic life in that concept was an evolution of me kind of going through my career, going on a journey, going on my pursuit, I didn't know at the time, to figure out who I really am and what I'm supposed to be doing. So along the way, I was showing up as what I felt was my authentic self at the time, but it was not my kind of like true authentic self, like the one I was created to be. I was on the journey to find that. And you referenced before we recorded the photo that I share from time to time of me wearing a suit. And it's a prime example of how in the moment, I didn't know that I was not fully being my authentic self. So the picture is me. I took a selfie. It was the day we got photos for the company website. I have a suit on. They like trimmed my hair up and styled it in a way that I wouldn't have styled it. I didn't even get to wear my own tie. It was somebody else's tie that I wore. And I'm just making this face that I'm like smugging at the camera. And I look back at that. I'm like, I didn't know it at that time, but I was not as happy of a person as I am today. And it's because I wasn't allowed to be my true authentic self. So from that point on, as I went and became my own business owner, I had the freedom to do whatever I wanted to do as far as growing my business, exploring. And that's when I just kept on trying new things and moving closer and closer to different versions of myself, experiencing different versions of myself. And then I had a moment of kind of burnout. And then through that burnout, I reprioritized taking care of myself. And I found that there's an alignment for myself of spirit, mind, and body. And when I found that alignment, a lot of doors opened up, a lot of things made more sense. And that is when I came up with this idea of now I'm living the life I was created to live. Like, this is my authentic life. This is the life that I'm supposed to be living. And then once I realized that and I saw how happy I was, the sense of purpose that I had, how things were just falling into place the way they're supposed to be, the time I have for my family, I'm like, I want everybody to experience. And then I start kind of thinking and reading and reflecting on this idea of the authentic life, and just ultimately came to this realization that I have a belief that we were all created for a specific reason. And I've always kind of tiptoed around this creation idea, and I talk about spirit, mind, and body and in spirituality. But at the end of the day, I think most of us believe in a higher power of some sort, whatever you want to call it. And that if you believe in that, that higher power created you for a reason, gave you certain gifts and talents, made you the way that you're the way, because no one else in the world can be like Grace. And there are certain aspects of Grace and certain aspects of myself that if we can find them, allows us to be exactly what we were created to be, and allows us to bring to the world what nobody else can bring. A version of something that no one else can bring. And we all have that in us. I just don't think we all have found it. And I think that leads us to living our authentic life. And I believe that if you're living your authentic life, then, it's not perfect, but there are a lot more good things going on. You're operating in flow. Things are going really well, and it's an awesome space to be. So I just want more people to find it. And in order for more people to find it, I have to get more people just to start questioning, like, why am I doing the things I do? Why do I believe the things I do? Are these my beliefs, or is this something I've been told and I just ran with it? So that is where the authentic life kind of came from.
I love that. So there's so much there I want to dive into. First of all, would you say, because so much of, I think what I also resonate in terms of your approach to this is about challenging those narratives. And it's something that I'm personally right now in my life diving even more into with my business and with how I'm realizing things, challenging the narratives internally, externally, societally, culturally, that maybe we have been conditioned to believe or have internalized. Would you say that, like, when you were younger, for example, in high school, and you just you wore what you wanted to wear and you didn't really care, were you rebellious? Would you say you were like on the rebellious side?
No, I was afraid to get in trouble. So I wasn't rebellious.
Okay.
I didn't view like dressing different from people, and I didn't dress crazy. And a lot of times I did dress like everybody else, but every once in a while I'd venture out and express myself. But I definitely wasn't rebellious because I was afraid to get in trouble. And I've never really thought about that before. So that's an awesome question.
That's interesting because I think, well, you are definitely very, I think, independent. I think you would characterize probably yourself that way. And I am as well. The reason why I bring this up is because when I was having a conversation with Matt, we got into that, and he asked me if I had a period of time in my life when I was rebellious. I tended to be a good, like, I didn't want to get into trouble either. I tended to be a good kid, but I do distinctly remember a period of time in my life, the latter part of high school, heading into like college and things like that, where I did become rather rebellious. And when I was questioned why, it was because I was bored. I was bored and I was tired of sort of, I think, those narratives, even though that's not something I could have articulated at the time, but in retrospect, looking back. So that's why I was curious if there was rebellious in the sense that Why do we have to just accept that this is what it is? That's where the
Well,
boredom comes from.
I
Yeah.
I would say in that definition, and I was starting to think that way anyways as you were talking. I do think there is some rebellion in me. When I originally think of rebellious, I think about like kids dyeing their hair red and like all like being
Uh,
like overly against everything and like almost to stand out. But when I think about how I've approached my business and growing my business and deciding not to grow it to be real big, like that is rebellious compared to what the financial planning world says a firm is supposed to look like. So I don't care about how much assets under management I grew. I didn't like I had a subscription model which was different. So I do think there is some rebellion in that I'm going to do things the way I think is best for
things,
me
yeah.
and I feel like, and I don't care if that's what the norm is. So there is rebellion then, but I'm also not going to be like disrespectful in my rebellious and being like,
Yeah.
flipping off the
Yeah.
industry and doing
Yeah.
things way over the top. So there's a little bit of
Right.
rebellion in that, a respectful rebellion in me.
Yeah, I get okay. So then I'm going to ask you because this is it also struck me when you were giving your masterclass today, and it just struck me just now as you were speaking. You have this degree of conviction that I really like, and it also very much resonates with me. I have a whole by the way, I'm going to get into this later, but I have a whole theory, sort of my idea on this beautiful life that you are that's unfolding with you and like and what you're doing and stuff. But I'll get into that. So I'm approaching it from right now from this point of conviction. You asked me when I was on your podcast, where does the confidence come from? So I'm going to kind of flip that over to you
Hmm.
and ask you the same question about where do you think that conviction, sort of like to be able to stand in yourself. And I think certainly as an educator, this is very interesting to me about how I can empower others to discover their own conviction. It's not so easy because very often people will let go of their agency, their individual
Hmm.
agency, because they would rather be told what to do. And like it feels safer. There's fear there. There's a lot of stuff that's there. And so it's always such an interesting question for me about how do we encourage others to develop and find that agency and that degree of conviction in themselves. Do you have any sort of thoughts around that for yourself?
I think that your approach to helping people discover it is the right way. I think it has to be self built or self made. So where my conviction and confidence comes from, I have to believe that the confidence early on comes from my parents. And maybe it's a part of my natural disposition as well. Again, maybe in a past life I discovered the power of confidence and took it with me. I don't know, but I've always had confidence, and I would like to believe that I've had confidence without tipping over to be like arrogant.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but I've never doubted myself. Um, Everything, and this may be I set too low of goals, but everything I've set out to accomplish, I have, which just builds that confidence. Going back to making basketball teams, making AAU teams, having a goal of starting, like all of those goals I've set for myself that I really believed in, I accomplished. So every single one of those just pours more confidence in me. Um, the conviction, which is tied to confidence, but like of my message today, the reason I'm so convicted in it is because I personally experienced it. Like I
ah,
didn't read somebody else's book and say, oh,
mhm.
Matt was a genius. I think this is true. Let me go tell this story. Because now I'm telling Matt's story, but I don't have the conviction because I haven't experienced it firsthand. Like what I'm talking about, what I want to help people find, how I believe you might be able to find it is because that's what worked for me. And I believe in it to the point of the fact that I don't believe in coincidences, the fact that I can't scientifically prove to you that they aren't coincidences. I don't have to. I'm fully convicted that the universe gives me signs and guides me to where I'm supposed to be going in the form of bald eagles and numbers and other synchronicities that go. Other people might think that's crazy and then I'm connecting dots that aren't really there, but I'm convicted that they are signs because I experienced it. And there's no way you can convince me that that's not the truth because, again, it's my personal experience. So,
I
what can we
love
do?
that.
What can
Yeah,
you and I do to help people? It is to help guide people to have their own experiences in life,
yeah,
to build
yeah,
up their own
yeah.
confidence, to build up their own conviction. And maybe from time to time, we can help them see something that maybe they missed because maybe they have blinders on, maybe they have some traumas they're working through that doesn't allow them to see the accomplishments that they're making to build that confidence. So highlighting like Grace, you're continuing to do one new thing a week. You may not have realized that, but I want to point that out, that you're doing one new thing this week, and and that gives you the confidence to do another
Yeah.
new thing next week. And confidence compounds. And then eventually
Yes.
they won't need that, and they'll have that confidence. And then it's a pretty cool place to be when you believe in yourself enough to go after the things that you want. And also that confidence stays with you long enough that if you go down a path that you think is right and you realize it's wrong, you still have the confidence to come back and right the ship and go
Yes.
back down the path.
Yes, that's absolutely. Do you, so I love how he brought it to lived experiences and because I think that's very, very powerful. And I think again ties back into that whole idea of really understanding who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And trusting that and building that sort of acceptance and trust. The in terms of in relation to experiences, does that mean you didn't have fear or you don't really grapple with fear when it comes to, for example, challenges? Because that's really where people get stuck. Like they will rather stay in a comfort zone or safe
Mm-hmm.
zone rather than challenge themselves into discomfort. And it's by going through that very challenge is where the confidence is going to be built and all of that stuff, the lived experiences. Excuse me. Do you, were you always kind of bold with that ever since you were a child, like in terms of, or was it something that you learned along the way?
I think when I was younger, I was more calculated. Like I took risks that I was pretty confident I was going to succeed in. So there wasn't a lot of fear. And maybe that wasn't good. Maybe I should have took bigger risks. As I've gotten older, I don't, I don't fear failing. With the exception of if something I'm pursuing and I failed impacted my family, then I would be more reserved. But because I have had so many, this sounds egotistical, but so many successes, and is relative. Like, because I have accomplished so many things I've set out to accomplish, big and small, I don't think I'm going to fail. And if I do come up short, I'm going to be learning something anyways, and I'm going to come back. And the outcome of it is not life or death. If I was going to if I was put in front of an opportunity or a risk that if it didn't go well, I'd have to file bankruptcy and my family would have to sell their house, we'd have to sell their house and move. I might have some fear with that, and I might not do it because the risk reward might not be in my favor. So I think what has helped me is trying to put myself in as many situations as possible where the favor tilts in my way, and that I know what the greatest risks are. I'm comfortable with them. So even if I don't succeed, it's okay. I pick myself up. My ego gets bruised a little bit, and then I move forward. So I guess I don't fear failing, because if it is a failure that would result in death or blowing up my family,
Right.
I probably won't do it. Like, I can't imagine a scenario that would be worth that risk. But everything else is not life and death. It's not going to be a negative impact to my family or my clients. And then I'm comfortable with taking that on. And then I just have that belief that I'm gonna make it. And I might not complete it the way I thought I was, but I might still get to the end because I'm gonna keep on going. And I think what makes it a little bit easier to stick with that is the things that you're pursuing are things that you're passionate about, so that the hard work that goes into it doesn't seem so hard, and that the stumbles along the way are learning opportunities rather than failures. And then you just keep moving in that. I think I might have a different story if the things I was pursuing were forces, things that weren't really aligned with me, and I was just trying to make something happen, trying to be somebody that I'm not. Then maybe I would have a little bit more fear. But I think that if I'm going after something that I really believe in, that I really want, I genuinely believe I'm going to get there one way or another. And that allows me not to be afraid. And I also, the final thing is, I'm a big believer in energy. So if I go into something fearful, I think I'm going to attract bad things to me. So I try to check that. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean I don't have those fears that come up, or I don't have those negative thoughts, but I am very aware of them, and I shut them down really quick. Like, if I have a day where something negative happens or unexpected, like, I'll process the emotion. I'll be sad. I'll be angry, but I catch it real quick, and I'm like, all right, back to center. Because if I don't change my energy, then it's going to compound, and it's going to be another thing and another thing, and then I'm going to be buried. So let's process it. Let's evaluate it real quick, but then let's focus on the positive and the good, and then let's right this ship really, really quick. And I think that's saved me from a lot of extra trials and tribulations, because I just didn't let that energy pull more towards me.
I love what you just said because I believe the same thing too, that in my experience, well, certainly fear is never going to go away. It's part of the human condition. It's part of human
Hmm.
nature. It's part of what makes us us. But I think we can learn to be quicker at recognizing it when it rears its head,
Hmm.
and quicker because you know yourself better. You know how to move through it quicker. You know how to
Hmm.
process it quicker and get through it. And I think so. For example, even just for me, like things that maybe I would have hesitated to do years ago. Like it would have taken me maybe 6 months to kind of work through something. Now I can do it in like 2 days and like process it and
Hmm.
like, okay, all right, let's get through it. And in that sense. So um, I love that. I just retweeted something today, uh, because this also ties into something you just said. A post that said, the more, the more we don't listen to our intuition, the more we seek external validation because it takes that much more to go against our own selves. And I just loved that so much
That's good.
that, that good, right? Like it's when we become disconnected, right, to that part of us, that voice, our soul, um, that we need more energy. We need more validation. We need people to tell us that we're doing the right thing because we become so disconnected to it. So I want to dive into, segueing into that, you spoke about something today in the masterclass that I just loved. And this is kind of like leading the way into what's happening in terms of our businesses and the changes and shifts that are happening. Um, because I have never heard it framed this way. It is something that I have also talked about in my newsletter, in my community, in a different way. But then when you brought it up, I was like, oh, this is such fantastic framing. You talked about the gifts we have
Hmm.
versus the unique gifts that we have. And can you explain that to our audience? Because this is such a
Yeah.
fantastic point. Yeah.
I literally put those pieces together within the last week. Like I've talked
Oh,
about gifts and talents for a long time. And actually, you know how I'm writing poems. On the way home, I was in Boston Monday and Tuesday. On the flight home, I swear being in a plane makes me more creative. I think it's because I'm closer to like source. I'm higher up in the air.
okay.
But I wrote a poem I'll be releasing. It's called G's and T's, Gifts and Talents. So, but what I talked about in the class and what I realized this week is I have gifts and talents that I share with other people. Meaning, I have gifts and talents that have made me a financial advisor that has been able to build a business with great clients, people I love working with, provide for my family, live a good life, and make impact in their lives. But if I'm being honest, if you strip out the relationship aspect of it, like the relationship with me and my clients, that's a little bit harder to replace. But the technical skills, there are countless financial advisors out there who could sit in my seat and do the financial planning that I do just as good as me, and many even better. So like my skills as a financial advisor are good, and they are gifts and talents because not everybody has them, but they are replaceable by somebody else. And that's okay. But I also have unique gifts and talents that I've discovered through my pursuit and trying things out that I believe to be my creativity, that I believe to be my energy, my positivity, which gives me the ability to inspire people. It is my storytelling. I don't think I'm the best storyteller in the world, but I think I tell good stories. And then my love of creating content and just expressing myself creatively. Like those are like they're more creative, they're more qualitative traits, but those are my unique gifts and talents. And what makes them unique to me is that in the right situation, whether that be company, opportunity, audience, in the right position, those unique gifts and talents carried out through me make me irreplaceable. There are tons of people out there talking about concepts of authentic life and spirit, mind, and body and how to align. There's a lot of people talking about this stuff, but nobody does it like me. Nobody talks the way I talk. Nobody creates videos the way I do. Like that is my unique thing that makes me different from everybody. And I think those gifts are the ones I'm supposed to be pouring more and more into, which puts me in a position of like, okay, I have gifts and talents that have done great for me, for my family. I have a great business with people that I love. It's not as if I hate what I'm doing. Like, let me run away from that. It's like, how do I maintain what I have and don't build that anymore? And then focus all of my future growth and building towards my unique gifts and talents. And I shared within the group that like this kind of ties how money pulls into all of this. Being a financial advisor through those gifts and talents has given me a lot and put me in a very fortunate position. I have worked through some money scripts that I finally have accepted that wanting to make more money for good reasons to help people is not greedy. So now I have a goal for my financial plan for my authentic life to make more money. And I believe that the way that I hit those goals is not through continuing to be a financial advisor to more families. It's from future growth being leveraging my unique gifts and talents. Because if what I believe is to be true, when I find that right situation, whether that is the right conferences to speak at or the right platform for my podcast or my daily notes, when I find that right place, I will be able, not in a greedy way, but I will be able to charge a premium for my services. Because if you want that message, I'm the only person in the world who can bring it the way that I bring it. And if that's your audience and that's what they want to hear, then there's a premium for what it is that I bring. And I'm not going to be the right person for every situation. So there'll be other opportunities that I'm not the right person, and that's perfectly fine. There's somebody else with their unique gifts and talents that fits it there. And unique gifts and talents are across the board. It could be cooking, or like everybody has unique gifts and talents. So what the challenge is beginning to separate what are my shareable gifts and talents, my universal gifts and talents that other people have as well, and then what are my unique gifts and talents that make me different from everybody else. Now, you discovered yours for a period of your life at a very early age. Now you kind of outgrew those, but so now it's like, okay, what are my new unique gifts and talents? If that's what you want. And I live in a world where I don't believe in absolute. So just because I believe in this and I have conviction doesn't mean it's right for everybody. There's different ways to go. I just think that what's really important is whether you decide to leverage just your general gifts and talents, or you want to find and pursue your unique gifts and talents, as long as you're making that decision consciously and you know why, then I'm happy for you. What pains me to see is people living lives they don't really realize they don't want, because they've never explored it. No one's ever told them they have more agency in the life that they live and what they create. No one's told them that, so they don't know. I just want you to know and reflect and begin to look. And it's not like you have to go from here to there overnight. Like, explore the interest, explore your passion, see where it takes you. What do you learn? Oh, I like to do this. Well, do a little bit more of it and see where it takes you. And I think that's a great guide, is just doing the things that you feel called to do. Because as I talk about alignment of spirit, mind, and body, those things that you have interest in, or those passions you have, I attribute them to your heart. They're things that you love. I believe your heart is your direct connection to whatever creative source you have that created you. And I think that creator is telling you through your heart, this is where you're supposed to be going. I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be, because that's no fun, but listen to your heart and those passions and those interests and follow them, and they will be your guide. And what I experienced is, as I followed them, passions sometimes turned into other passions, and it was kind of a winding road, but it got me there. But I continued to listen to my interest and my heart and the things that were calling me, which was my guide. So that's a long ramble. Hopefully that answered the question.
No. That was fantastic. So you and I, so just for context, everyone, so Justin and I haven't caught up recently with regards to some changes I'm making in my life. And I'm going to share that right now, because I want you to understand how what you just said ties into all of that. So one of the things that I have been deeply considering over the past few months was with regards to this, because what I had realized was I had, excuse me, I had put myself inadvertently into a box by doing the thing that the regular gifts, right? The skill set, the thing that, yes, is replaceable, a fractional CMO. I mean, of course, I have a certain way of doing it, but someone else can come in and do it. And I was starting to feel very deeply unaligned with that as I led with my curiosity and was exploring other things that were calling to me. And it just started to feel more and more out of alignment. And I asked myself the question, and this is what I encourage everyone to ask themselves: what do you do the most beautifully? This is the way I posed the question to myself, because there are so many narratives there. And I realized, even just for myself, the fractional CMO work was an easy way for other people to understand me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you put yourself in a certain way, you frame yourself in a certain way, and people are like, oh, that's what she does, that's who she is, and they kind of grasp it. But I'm an artist. I have been an artist my whole life. And my interests and my passions and what I love to explore, and it just to your point as well, your creativity, right, and all these things that you that are inside of you. That's what makes us human. I was not honoring that. I wasn't honoring myself with the way that I was doing things, and so I decided to shift that. And I realized, when we talk about these unique gifts, this kind of zone of genius, this area where you can inhabit, where you're constantly happy, right? Like you're doing what it is that you thrive and you were born on this earth to do, or as you, to your point, created to do, um, is is oftentimes, and here's where I think a lot of us run into issues, is oftentimes not the things that you can check off on a list. It's
Hmm.
not the things that you check off on a resume, these hard skills of like, I am a marketer with this kind of experience and I do this. My I'm very similar to you. My ability to be able to speak, to be able to help people, to inspire others, to do this is kind of where my realm is, the realm of ideas, how I make connections between disparate ideas, how I these are not things that you put on a list. They're not like check off, hard skills. But this is the human quality, and we also talked about that previously. As technology continues to evolve exponentially, these human factors. How do we connect with one another? How do we communicate? Where is it that you thrive? What is your thing that only you can do? Right. And once that clicked into place for me, this is why it's synchronicity, Justin. So this clicked into place for me like really about a month ago. And I realized, wow, I had been operating under these narratives and a lot of fear that I didn't even realize was kind of buried beneath it that kept me locked in a way that didn't honor the entirety of who I am. So I'm going to change that. And so I started shifting things around. I'm doing more stuff with education. I built a new initiative called Break Down the Box, which is about challenging the narrative societally, culturally, internally. That's going to be my educational and speaking initiative, part of Kizuna. I've sort of gradually weaned myself off of CMO projects and I'm now focusing more on advisory. But that advisory, I'm not limiting to marketing. I'm an advisor for music. I got asked to be an advisor for a piano association here. I'm doing advisory on leadership consulting. I'm doing advisory, helping people take the leap and pivot their career and doing advice. So whatever excites me and interests me, it, because yeah, and I'm trying to occupy that zone. And so those are kind of the shifts that I'm kind of putting into place in which I'm really trying to stay as much as possible to your point, those unique gifts and to honor it and realize it from that way. So when you started talking about that today in the master class, I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to talk to Justin about all of this stuff because I am exactly. And so even this podcast is one element of that where I am diving more into these conversations that matter to me, that have meaning for me, that I know has impact. And I'm trying to do more of this like community building, other things that where I thrive. I know I thrive. But it has taken me, to your point, so long. It's such a journey and evolution, as you always say, peeling away the layers one at a time and starting to understand and oh, this is okay. So this is what it is, and this is how it aligns. So that's kind of where I'm at. So which is why it was so profound to me the moment because we didn't plan this, we didn't talk about it,
No.
and then he started speaking about it. And you started speaking about it in the masterclass, and I was like, oh, this is exactly what it is. And so, like I said, I had just sent out that newsletter, like I think a week ago, in which I asked, what do you do the most beautifully? Because I realized there's that distinction. To your point, there is that very critical distinction between those two ideas regarding our gifts and talents.
So here's what's so cool about these conversations. Like you are unlocking new doors in my mind for new thoughts and new ways to kind of explain things, but also for things for me to go explore. So I wrote down a couple of things I want to say. First off, I love Zone of Genius. I won't steal it, but I love that. That's so good. I'm going to keep unique gifts, but I love Zone of Genius. I appreciate you sharing where you've been, where you're going. And here's the thing that's important for people to realize is that you would have never discovered that the outsourced CMO was not right for you, not honoring your gifts if you never did it. So
Yes.
sometimes we do these things for us to realize that's not the version of me. And there's a story that I just shared with somebody else. I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but bear with me. I'll try to make it quick. A coach I was working with shared this with me. His pastor said it, but basically the story is there's a father and son traveling in the desert in an old truck before GPS times and cell phones. and they come to a fork in the road that wasn't on the map. So they're not quite sure, do they go right or do they go left? And they both sit down and they decide they're going to pray about it and ask God for direction. And they sit down and pray and they get back together and they both say, right is the direction we're supposed to go. So they go off to the right and they're driving for a little while and then they come to a dead end. And the son looks to the dad and is like, why did God tell both of us to go down this path if it was a dead end? And the dad didn't have an answer at the time. So they circle back, come back to the fork in the road. Now they know to go left. So they go left. And as they're driving along, it's taking a while, getting dark, starting to get cold because it's the desert. Nothing's around. And they're, kind of getting a little nervous because they're getting close to being low on gas. And then finally they see a light, like the town ahead. And so the father kind of has this realization. He tells the son, the reason God sent us to the right was because he needed us to see that that was the wrong path. Because if they would have guessed and gone left first while they would have gotten it right, they may have traveled far enough down without seeing any of the town, gotten nervous, turned back around to go to the right, ran out of gas when they were already on the right path. So sometimes you have to go down the wrong path to know you're on the right path or to know what the right path is. Because it tells you that, but then now you're never going to go back and regret, I should have tried being an outsourced CMO. That seemed like a great job. It would have been great. No, it's not it. So kudos to you for doing it and then also realizing that's not it and coming back. Because a lot of people would stay in it because it is a little bit easier. It's easier for people to understand you. They can make good money on it, but it's not what they're supposed to do. A lot of people would sit there. So good job for trying it out. Good job for realizing it's not right and then coming back to it. So I wanted to highlight that it's, you have to sometimes experience things to know that it's the wrong thing. So you never think about it again. Like one of my goals is I don't want to look back, or I don't want my clients to look back in life and have regrets. Like I don't want people to regret that they didn't try something if they could have tried it, if we just would have explored it. So try it. And if it's not it, now you never have to worry about it. And you have no regret that you didn't do or try this thing. And then I also think that like in your example, the CMO thing is a little bit of a test too. Like I think sometimes life gives us tests to see, are we truly committed to the things that we want to do? So for you passed the test because you realized the CMO job wasn't really it and to come back to the things you really want to do. But it could be as simple as something to be, I have this authentic life I've discovered. I've got my finances aligned to everything's great. And then over here is this opportunity that doesn't align, but it's more money. And do I stay with what I know is the right path for me? Or do I convince myself to go chase the money and try to tell myself it is the right thing? And the tough thing about life is sometimes that is the right thing. But a lot of times I think we get these tests to pull us away from how committed are we to this thing we say we want when we're easily dissuaded by something else. Or maybe it's a different title and status. So I think we get these tests along the way to see how bad do you really want it? Again, I don't think that our creator is going to make it easy for us. They're going to give us the direction. They're going to give us signs. But then also we have to make this show for them entertaining. So they're going to give us some tests and see how we handle it. And then the final thing I had, just random thoughts from what you said, going back to gifts and talents, doors being unlocked. I wonder if our unique gifts and talents are the things that can't be taught. So you mentioned, both of our communication, inspiration, like though you can't teach those things. I think you can like improve upon them and people can give you some skills, but at the end of the day, I think that is just a natural ability that people have. So are our unique gifts more along the lines of the things that you can't teach and are hard to measure, but they might execute in ways that we are more measurable? So being that, a marketer's unique gift and talent may not be their marketing. It may be their creativity. It may be their storytelling that shows up in the form of a marketer, or maybe a cook, a chef. Their unique gift and talent is their creativity in the kitchen. So it shows up like you think it is my ability to prepare a steak. That is not your unique gift and talent. Your unique gift and talent is the way you came up with the seasoning that no one else does. Like, I wonder if unique gifts and talents are immeasurable and not teachable, and then they find their way to avenues that we can put into ways that can be measured and judged, for whatever reason to go forward. But that was something that came up as you were talking about that. So that was a new door you opened up.
I think that's a fantastic point. I think the way our society works and our culture works, we like to it makes it very easy for us to sort of categorize people. It's easier for us to process that, right? So let's say you have someone who is very gifted, to your point. Oh, you should be a chef, right? You should, because that's like makes it understandable for everyone. It's
Mm-hmm.
easy to process that. And I think where what I certainly want to do moving forward, and part of my mission is, again, I think those are all narratives that I want to challenge. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I have tried to live my life in that way as well, whether it's that I can be a musician, I can be an author, I can be a marketer, I can be, in business leader, I can do these things, but the core, to your point, the core gift of it, the talent, the thing that makes me, is not something that we are so used to in this society measuring and quantifying and saying, okay, it fits X, Y, Z. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something more macro than that. And I think that applies to everybody. And so when I challenge people when I'm talking about this and I say, to really think about what it is, to not, we're so trained to think of skills like, okay, I acquired this skill or I acquired this skill and therefore this, but to really look at who who you are. And a lot of that is tied, to your point, to passion, what lights you up, where you
Mm-hmm.
thrive, where you feel good, where you feel strong. And I realized for me, like I feel so good and so strong when I'm writing, when I'm doing something creative or artistic, when I'm having conversations with people, when I'm teaching and doing something. All of these things have meaning for me on a very
Mm-hmm.
profound level. And that's how I kind of start to figure out, like, okay, that's where it is. That's where I gotta kind of occupy. I love that. I wonder if when you say it's maybe we can't teach them the specific talents, but I think what you're doing and what I'm going to continue to do moving forward as well is helping people to connect to who they are. In that sense, we can help them. In that sense, we
Yeah,
can
yeah.
teach them, right? That if
The
they
talents are
connect
already
that,
there.
yeah,
We don't
already
have
there,
to
to just, yeah,
find it.
find it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that's, I think, going to be so much of things moving forward. I was just recently helping someone, and you know this as someone who created your own business, that whole journey requires such internal growth. This is the
Mm-hmm.
number one thing. External growth cannot be realized until you address the internal journey first, whether it's the
Mm-hmm.
limiting beliefs, whether it's the fear, whether it's the whatever constraints you're like, all of that needs to be moved through. And that is actually the most difficult part, I think, about realizing a business. Have you had experience with that yourself? Like when you started your own business and kind of went off on your own, was it similar to like when you were a kid and like you would just kind of dive in and do things, or did you have to kind of move through some growth?
So there was definitely growth. But I would never say the building of this business or anything else I've ever done, the community that I started, I would never characterize those as hard. Now, I worked hard and it was a lot of time, effort, and energy, which I think some people would say that that makes it hard. And has everything gone smoothly and perfectly? No, nothing ever does. But the reason I don't view it as hard is I was building what I wanted the way I wanted to do it. So those road bumps that come, the speed bumps that come, or the things that like, it's still a part of what it is I want to do. Where I think that building a business is hard is where you're building a business that you aren't really passionate about, but it's a good business opportunity. I think when it's aligned with you or you have a passion for it, then the hard work, while yes, it's there, it doesn't feel hard because there's enjoyment in what you're doing. That's why, like, the things that you enjoy, your passions light you up and excite you. It's for a reason. Like, there's a reason you enjoy doing that. Like, I don't think we're instilled with things that make us happy that we don't like to do. Like that is a confirmation of, yes, you are supposed to be doing this and more of it. How, like, that's to be removed, but this is something you need to double down on because I, your creator, am making you feel really, really good doing this. And if you think about it, we all have different things that light us up. There's overlap amongst us, but there's people who get like, I hate cutting the grass. There are people who cut their grass twice a week and absolutely love it. Like, we all have these different things. It's a guide to help you figure out what that is. So, yes, there was growth with business, but I never thought it was hard. And then maybe it goes back to my mindset that if I focus on the negative things too much and how hard it is, and that's going to bring more bad to me. But I was just so excited to be able to start my business. I was so excited that people were wanting to work with me and keep on going that I enjoyed, when I started my business, I started in my basement. I didn't have an office. To be cheap and thinking I was going to go meet my clients at their house, I bought a portable scanner, like copier, like long, skinny, one page at a time, was the only scanner I had. For anybody out there who has opened a new account and transferred an account from another financial institution, you know how much paper that is. So I sat in my basement watching a variety of shows on TV till like 2 or 3 in the morning early on, feeding one piece of paper into this scanner at a time. That would have been something that somebody would have complained about. Oh, this is so hard. Every page I put in there was a brick in the foundation of this business that I was building that I was so proud of already. So I was excited to be able to do that. And then I learned how to like feed in, type, and I could do like 2 things at once. But I was so excited to have it, and it was what I was supposed to be doing, that I never let it seem like it was hard.
Okay. Again, you unlocked another door for me as well. So you just mentioned something about when you start a business that is like a good business model, but it's not necessarily what it is that's aligned with who you are. And I think that's what the initial fractional CMO work with Kizuna was. Because here's what I realized. I just literally wrote about this in my newsletter. I realized that, of course, I left sort of corporate world and 9 to 5 for the same reasons as many entrepreneurs, which is this idea of freedom, right? We talk about freedom a lot, like freedom of time, freedom of choice, freedom to be able to choose your client, etc. But what I realized was that it's a very, and I challenge everyone again to kind of reflect and kind of dive deeper, because I realized it was a very unnuanced sort of reason, because I wasn't searching for that, because I got the clients, but I was, to your point, working crazy hours, not happy. I wasn't thriving. It was like all of that stuff. And when I realized the freedom that I was actually searching for was the freedom to be who I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was searching for.
Mm-hmm.
Not, all this other stuff that we tend to couch that conversation in. It was the freedom to be who I am. And then as soon as I understood that core reason, I immediately saw how it wasn't aligned. What I was doing wasn't aligned with that. And then it enabled me to be able to ask the deeper questions, the larger questions of how I wanted to evolve. So I think that is what I ended up doing. I left the 9 to 5, but I ironically created another 9 to 5 for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And with the most conservative standard business model ever. Like literally, I just took myself out of one box and then put myself in another one that was kind of self-imposed and self-created. So understanding that was such an eye-opening moment for me. And then once I identified that, now I know everything about Kizuna is about the freedom to be who I am. And so that constantly brings it back to that very critical point. Is this in alignment with me? Am I being who I really am? And all of that stuff. So I love that about that.
And that's really important, is the final part of that. Is that aligned with who you are? That realization, that freedom you're seeking may not be right for everybody. And it's not right for everybody. And there are some people that their authentic life is, hey, there's a great business opportunity that you see. It doesn't align with you fully, but through executing that business, it helps you get to what you're supposed to do next. So this is one of the things I've realized is going to stunt my growth if I were to compare myself to other people creating content and audiences, because what we crave as an audience is a stance. This is the way to do something. And I don't believe in the way. Like passion's one that I kind of use as an example. Like, I think people should follow their passions. Cal Newport talks about how you shouldn't follow your passions. You should do something you're good at and passion will develop. While I think that can be true for some people, I don't think it's true for everybody. So I don't think that's fair to be like your stance is this is the only way. And the truth is, the do something you're good at and passion will develop is what I personally experienced. But like now I'm following my other passions going forward. So like I've experienced both. So I only bring that up to say that, and through this whole conversation, like you and I are sharing our personal experiences and what we've learned, and what we've learned will work for some people. It won't work for everybody, but the universal message I think is figuring out what is the right path for you, the
Yes.
individual. For
Yes.
Grace, it's freedom to be herself. For somebody else, hey, like I'm comfortable not fully being, I don't want everybody to know how I really fully am. So let me give the world 80% of myself. That's okay for me, and do these other things. And the final thing I just want to be careful about, a lot of what we talk about sometimes with following and being yourselves results in entrepreneurship and starting your own business. Like that's not for everybody either.
That's very
Because
true. Very
there's a
true.
lot
Yeah.
of downsides to running your own
Hmm.
business. Like there are a lot of financial advisors that start their own business and realize, I don't want to run the business. I want to be a financial advisor, and they go join another firm. So I also don't want people to think that through our conversation, every road has to lead to entrepreneurship and launching your own business or consulting. It might,
Absolutely.
but it may not. And that's perfectly okay. Like you can be your
Absolutely.
authentic self and have the freedom to be yourself within a corporation or an organization. And truthfully, we need that. We can't have everybody be an entrepreneur in the world. We need some people that their authentic self is a part of a team and part of they've got their gifts and talents that make them really, really valuable as a part of a bigger picture. And then other people need to be on the outside doing their own. So the point of that whole ramble and takeaway is, I don't believe there is one right answer, other than there is one right answer for you, and
Yeah.
you need to figure out what that is.
But that's the whole point of the authentic self, though, right? The authentic self is, or the authentic life is that it's you. It's authentic to you, meaning that
Right.
there is obviously no one way because no one else is you. You are
Mm-hmm.
you, so you will have your path, and you will have your path and your way, and things that you're looking for. I want to kind of dive into a little bit about what I spoke about earlier. That I think one of the things that has struck me about you, um, because you mentioned earlier that sometimes people get uncomfortable when you talk about uh, the creator or being created or spiritual, things like that. I think for me, from sort of my perspective, I think you have a talent for seeing patterns. And I know this because I am very, very strong at pattern recognition, whether it's in music or mathematics. I mean, this is part of how I learn,
Mm-hmm.
and also in human behavior and human relationships, and how human nature tends to kind of fall that way. And I think when we see those things, we it also lends, I think, an ability to be able to see what doesn't fall into that pattern. Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense? So being able to
Yeah.
recognize it, being able to, and I think that's the part where interesting connections can be made. And I go back, I started off this conversation talking about searching. You brought up pursuit. This is the nature, I think, of what I call the artistic soul. And that's what I
Mm-hmm.
think you come from. And it's this pursuit, to your word, pursuit, search for. I'm constantly searching for whether it's deeper meaning, another layer. What is the next, how can I expand, like explore this on a more profound way? Um, and that ties, I think, into a lot of those things. So I only bring that up because sometimes I feel I don't feel like you have to apologize for the creator thing, because I think it's because you have an artistic soul, and so you're able to kind of see these things, because a lot of that stuff is about being able to recognize those patterns, being able to see the synchronicities, right, and how they align, and picking up on it immediately, and noticing all of that. Is that something that you've ever thought of for yourself, like that you have an artist's soul?
When you define it that way, yes. I would say in the last couple of years, I begin to identify as a creative or a creator. And to me, that would tie with like an artist's soul. But through my whole life, no. Like my whole life through college was basketball. Like that was my first love. And while back then I wouldn't have identified even that basketball was a creative sport, there is creativity on the court. There are states of flow on the court where you're playing and you're not even thinking anymore. You're just in this state of flow. We call it being in the zone on playing basketball. But I wasn't, I took art class in 6th and 7th grade and I won an award, but I would have never considered myself artistic or creative growing up. But as I have tapped into this creativity now with writing and everything, I definitely think I have an artist's soul. And I don't, I was listening to somebody or reading something the other day. Oh, it was the Dirt Nap. I forget who writes it. Is the newsletter. Jared Dillon, something like that. Jared Dillon, I think it is. But he's in the world of finance. But he was saying that he's not a content creator. He's an artist. that the way he puts his words together in his newsletter is art. And he also DJs, and that is art. And I never have thought about myself as an artist because I think of like an artist who did the paintings on my wall. Or I think of a musician being an artist, but I never thought of myself as a writer or as a video editor, as an artist. But it is art. It is creating, and art is one and the same. So I would have never said that before today, you asking me, but the way you explained it, yes, but I would have never considered myself that prior to 2 or 3 years ago.
Because I think artistry is, it's not what you do. I think that's the kind of preconception that a lot of people have, that, because you're a writer or because you
Hmm.
paint, that makes you an artist. I think it is a philosophy. I think it's
Hmm.
how you
Hmm.
approach life. I think it's how, again, the pursuit, the search to seek for something that is
Hmm.
not immediately realized, right? It's the constant search for that. Um, and I think, yeah, that's something, also an idea that I've been kind of thinking about recently and kind of developing, because I want to be able to talk about these things. Hmm, it's, do you ever come, well, I'm going to ask you this. Do you ever struggle with being able to either share or teach, I guess, share your insights on these things in a way that will resonate with everyone? And the reason why I bring that up is
Hmm.
because so much, again, like you, so much of what I understand, everything actually that I understand and have learned over the years, has been, of course, obviously through my own lived experiences. When your own lived experiences are not the same as everybody else's, when I learned about leadership by like being a soloist with the orchestra, there's not, it's sometimes hard for people to grasp that story and that
Hmm.
experience when I try to tell it. So I've been trying to figure out some sort of way in which I can coalesce and bring together, all of these ideas that I've had through different experiences and chapters of my life into like a larger container in which maybe will make it easier for others to understand. Um, have you ever struggled with that? Like saying something through your lived experience, and yeah.
I would say I do think I struggle with it. I don't struggle with the sharing. Like I'm probably too transparent and honest with the things that I share. Like I'm an open book, sometimes to a fault. So sharing the personal experiences is not hard for me. I view it as I'm planting seeds to create a forest to help people walk into this tree of realization sooner. So if somebody isn't following me, they might be walking through the desert, not a tree around to like give them that realization. But if I can do the podcast and join you on a conversation, and right, I'm planting seeds that hopefully will connect with somebody to when they're ready or help them become ready sooner. But I do think I struggle, and I guess like one way to look at that and to view that, it would be if I were to care about the vanity metrics of my podcast or my YouTube channel or my newsletter. Like those numbers aren't overwhelming. I'm not going to be getting any paid sponsorships because of my viewership or my following. And with the feedback to me of that is, I don't think it's because I do bad content, because I think I do good content and I enjoy it. But I think that it's not finding the right people yet, or when they're ready for them to take that and do something with it. So I don't think the sharing that I'm doing is changing in people's lives yet, because I think if it was changing people's lives yet, then they would be telling their friends and family, and I would see the viewership growing organically because of what I'm saying and what I'm doing, helping people. I think that I would also see that my new, future of my business doing the life planning would be growing faster because people are the message is helping them grow, and they're coming to me to help them kind of put the pieces together. And when we get done with that, I think referrals from that program are going to be crazy because of what I help people do. But it's not, I'm not getting people to understand it quite yet, or they're not ready yet, which is okay. Like I don't want to rush it. I don't want to start creating content for the algorithms and try to play those
Okay.
games to try to speed it up, because I want people to find me when they're ready and when they really want to, not just because I put a good, clever heading on there or I did a cheesy thumbnail that made them click. And maybe that's my fault, and maybe that is a roadblock I need to work through and an obstacle that I need to knock down. But I would say, yeah, I struggle because I think that when I have moments of weakness with what it is that I'm doing and like sharing my message, it's when I listen to the big podcasts and the famous people saying the exact same thing as me. Sometimes my initial response is, well, I'm saying that. Why am I not on Rich Roll's podcast? And why is Rich Roll not coming on mine? We would have an awesome conversation because I am saying the same thing. So I have that moment. But again, I check myself. I'm not living there because then bad things are going to happen. So then the next thing is, well, the positive is what I am experiencing and trying to help people find is good enough for that show and that audience. So I'm on to something. So just keep on going, keep on telling the story. And when the time is right, and if that's what's supposed to happen, then that's great. But Matt wrote a post. I love this post. It's about, do you want to be hip hop or underground? So Matt Ziegler, everybody we talk. Yeah. So high level of it, he compares Jay-Z, which is hip hop, and everybody knows Jay-Z, and another hip hop artist, Talib Kweli, who is the underground. And the comparison of it is there's a line in one of Jay-Z's songs where he says, if lyrics sold, I'd be Talib Kweli. And he goes on to top. He does it because he wants to make more money. And Talib Kweli is not as well known, but he's had a long career and he's very, very talented. And he has the respect of Jay-Z. Like it was Jay-Z. Like it wasn't a backhanded compliment. It was just like, look, I want to make money and lyrics don't necessarily make money. It's all the other stuff. And when Matt wrote that, that was one of those moments I was kind of like in my feelings about the size of my audience and then not growing. And when I read that, I was like, no, I would much rather be Talib Kweli. Like, I don't care to have the big audience. For a while, I told myself, like, I don't want to get famous. Then I removed that ceiling to say, if that's what's supposed to happen, then so be it. Like, I'll own that. But like now, that's not even what I want. I want quality over quantity. I would rather have a much smaller following of people that are actually learning from my lessons and impacting their life than to be on a big podcast and have all these views, but a very small percentage of people are actually learning and doing anything with it. So a long-winded answer, yes, there's a struggle. The metric, and I don't put a lot of value behind metrics and check analytics too much, but my metric is the fact that things aren't growing as fast as one would want them to. I view that as the message is not helping people so greatly that they're telling other people. And I think maybe I just need to do more of it. Maybe I need to get better at it. But I'm not going to stop because I love it too much. And I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm just going to keep on doing it. And then it will do what it's supposed to do when the time is right.
There's a lot I want to say. All right. You know, just all these things sparking as you were talking. I am a big believer to your point about being as honest as possible so that the right people can come in, right? So that that alignment is right. I think looking back on even just this past recent experiences and things throughout my life, I think there has been some degree of, wow, this is a big one. Okay, so I think there's some degree of shame that's still there with regards to feeling like I didn't have a normal life. And so because that's there, I have a tendency to kind of amputate parts of me so that I can be more like I can fit into what is the norm. Do you understand what I mean? But yeah. And I think that again, tying back to the fractional CMO, I'm just seeing patterns now in my life. So that there have been moments where I almost feel apologetic or shameful or there's something there regarding the unusual nature of my life. And so because of that, I know that, to your point, the ceiling, right? Like I will create and impose a ceiling on myself in order to not make people uncomfortable and to avoid that pain that I felt as a child, the alienation and feeling different from everyone and not belonging and, all of that stuff. And that's a huge thing that I think I'm moving through, especially now in this new chapter and next chapter in my life. So it's interesting that that's kind of what comes to mind for me, because it was never about like I don't yeah, I've been in the social media game for so long, the marketing and stuff. Like I know that follower counts don't mean anything. I know all of this stuff. That never really mattered to me. But it's more about this human level of feeling accepted and
Hmm.
seen for, we talked about this, about seen for who I am, and getting there. And so there's something still there in me that I need to work through, and I'm working on it. But this idea that feeling bad that I'm not, that I didn't have a normal life, or that there's something shameful about that. Yeah. That's
Well, it's also because that non-normal life you had, a lot of people would have loved to trade shoes with you, like
mm,
to get to be paid to go travel the world, play music. Now they don't understand the isolation and all of the negative side to it. They just see on the surface level, oh, you got to travel the world and play music and got paid. Like I'll sign up for that
yeah.
any day. So I mean, maybe part of the shame is that you lived a life that on surface people would really love to have. Now, if they were in your shoes, they probably wouldn't have wanted all that because they don't know the truth behind it. So that might be some of the shame. But then it's just part of it is like you're disrupting the system. Your non-traditional life disrupts what has been said to be normal. And so it puts you to be kind of like an outsider. It's like we were talking about in the masterclass today with like people apologizing and discounting, like, oh,
Yeah.
I got this nice purse, but I got it on discount. Like you shouldn't
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
to like discredit the fact that you bought something that you wanted that was maybe expensive that maybe somebody else wouldn't have bought, but that you shouldn't have to discredit that so quickly to say, oh, but I bought it on a discount to make it okay. Like, because there's this norm that we're not supposed to spend things on expensive things, and buying expensive things is a waste of money and greedy and all these other things. So we back it down. It's not exactly the same, but it's maybe the same. And I had one thing I jotted down that I thought about after I got done talking, and it still ties into kind of like the metrics and numbers things. So with my podcast, one of the things I'm contemplating on doing is I'm contemplating writing out a list of like the famous names: Rick Rubin, Kendrick Lamar, Russ, Rich Roll, these big names. And
Mhm.
these are the only names that I ever want to have that are big on my podcast. And then everybody else is going to be an up and comer. Because one of the things that frustrates me is like, especially like when a book comes out, all of your major podcasts, it's the same person going around to all of them. And it's like there's this brotherhood and sisterhood that they only go on each other's podcast and they don't bring anybody else in because they don't want to like share the stage. And that frustrates me. So going back to numbers, like one of the cool things I want to do is publish this list and say, hey, here's the famous people. If I'm ever so lucky to sit down with them, you will know that that's authentic and genuine. I'm not chasing the numbers. And then I'm going to have people that you've never heard of that are brilliant, the Graces of the world, who don't get a chance to go on those big stages, because you need to hear fresh voices and see that there are amazing people walking down the street just like you that have all these great thoughts. And like when I had my old podcast, All About Your Benjamins, which is more of a finance one, my goal was, there's another big podcast in our industry that's Michael Kitces. It's the Kitces podcast, and he has advisors on. And it's like being on his podcast is kind of a signal of like, you've made it. My goal was I wanted to have the financial advisors that were going to be on Kitces' podcast before Kitces. So like identifying the talent out there and having them on my podcast, and then seeing them show up later on so I can be like, I knew that was going to happen. Look, they were on my podcast 2 years ago. And I had a good track record of doing that. So that's one of the fun things I plan to do with the podcast is I want to use it as a way to give great people with great voices a platform. It may not be the biggest platform, but it is a platform. And I have a feeling that a lot of these people in like 3, 4, 5 years will be the big names, or they'll be making the rounds on the big shows. And I can just sit back and smile and be like, yep, they were on my podcast first.
I love that. I love that. That's very you, from what I know about you. It's very you. I love that idea so much. And what a way to like amplify and nurture
And
those
it's a little
voices.
rebellious. It's a little
And it's a
rebellious.
little
I'm not
rebellious.
playing the system of trying to get all the same big names everybody else has.
I love that. I gotta tap into that energy a bit more. When I get like, ah, it's like I have these conflicts within me,
Hmm.
oftentimes, of, again, not wanting to rock the boat, being the pleasant person to work with, and all of that stuff, and the part that ends up, kind of amputating myself in order to fit other people's norms, and then the part of me that's just like, fuck you. Like,
Hmm.
I'm gonna challenge all of this shit. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one truth that could be of this narrative is it could be that I have come up to a goal that I'm afraid of, and I'm masking that fear of trying to go get the big names and trying to be a big podcast. I'm masking that fear by saying I want to help people out. Now, genuine to me is I'm a cheerleader, so I love to help elevated people, and I know that that's true to me. But there could be a part of the reason that I have chosen to focus on doing it this way is because I'm afraid of trying to do that. I'm afraid of not succeeding and like my podcast not growing. So that maybe it is a little bit of fear that leads me to this. But the thing that's cool is I think that whatever it is, whether it's rebellion of not wanting to play that game, whether it is a self-doubt that I can get those types of guests, it leads me to something that does align with me anyways. Like going back to the old podcast, I found a lot of enjoyment and satisfaction of finding the up and coming people before other people did. And one, I took pride in seeing that in others. But two, I was able to give people a platform in their early days that maybe played a small part of them growing and getting to where they want to be. And to me, that's more satisfying than having to being one of the top podcasts on Spotify or iTunes. So anyways, it was just a random thought. Like as you were talking, I thought, well, maybe this is a cop out and I'm going for the easier route because it's easier to get people who aren't as well known. But I genuinely believe deep down that is more about like, yes, that is frustrating and hard, but I have an easier angle and I have a good eye for talent. One of my gifts is seeing that talent. So why don't I just use that and find the people who are up and coming, help give them a voice, share them on my platform, and then see where they go from there. So
But that's
just a
such an
thought.
interesting point, Justin, because then it raises the question, how can we tell the difference? Or are we meant to know the difference between when, we're acting out of fear and limiting our own selves
Mm-hmm.
versus this is really where it is that yeah.
So my answer to that is I think that whether it's fear or whatever self-doubt is there to direct me to what I'm supposed to do because of the alignment I have in my life. And that alignment is the spirit, mind, and body. It is knowing who I am and being comfortable with that. So I think that everything that happens for whatever reason to me right now is because it's pulling me back to where I'm supposed to be. Now, if my alignment were off or I wasn't confident and I was reaching, then maybe I was succumbing to fear for the wrong reason. But I think whatever that emotion is or whatever that reason is for not trying to be the next Joe Rogan is because that doesn't really align with me. And there's a barrier preventing me from going there because I'm so aligned with what I'm supposed to be doing. It's almost like, all right, the universe got me into this alignment. It also doesn't want me to fall out of that alignment because it's got me in the place that I'm supposed to be to bring harmony to the world. So they don't want me to get out of there. So they throw these little things. So I think the answer to your question is a personal alignment to where you're operating where you're supposed to be and being the version of yourself you're supposed to. And it's ongoing to stay there. So it's not like it's you get there and you're done. It's you find that alignment and you keep on maintaining it, which is why I think the signs and stuff come. So I do think it might be fear and self-doubt, but I think that fear and self-doubt is a good fear and self-doubt to keep me focused on going the direction that I'm supposed to. Because one of my goals for my Pursuit brand is I want to have a record label to help up and coming hip hop artists put out their first album and then launch their own independent label. And this is like a project for 20 years down the road, but it's to help people on and help them get there. It's not to get the next big rap label. It's to get people who are really good, but no one knows them, an opportunity, and then to start their own record label because that will change their life and their family's life and the artists they hire. So I think it pushes that whatever that emotion is, pushes me back into staying in the alignment that I have and where I'm supposed to be. So the answer, long-winded, alignment is what helps you figure out what that emotion is and what it's supposed to mean.
Do you think there's a moment when you realize you are in alignment? Is there like a feeling for you?
For me, it's a feeling. I wouldn't say it's like always operating in flow. And I don't do the things every single day, as foolish as this is, that I should to put me in alignment. Like, if to put myself in alignment and maintain it involves getting up, doing breath work, meditating, doing some light exercise, being with the boys in the morning, going to hot yoga at 9:30, coming to the office to do my work, and then getting a weight workout in the afternoon. If I do all of those things, I feel like I am invincible and I'm just humming along. But I don't do it every single day. And the thing is, I don't have to do it every single day to not get in alignment, but I can tell when I'm starting to fall out of alignment. And it could be my energy's dropping, my creativity is stifling. Maybe I don't feel as good. I'm a little sluggish. Like, I have these cues that are saying, oh, need to get back in alignment. You need to get back to doing your yoga more regularly because X, Y, and Z. So for me, it is a feeling, which again, with my message is such a hard thing. There's these concepts and ideas, but ultimately it's unique to every individual. And a lot of it is feeling, and you won't know the feeling until you experience it. And then once you experience it, and the longer you stay in it, it's easier to notice when you start to drift. And you know what your bands are, how far you can drift. So if this is my alignment, my perfect alignment, I have this much room to, plus or minus, where I'm still in good alignment. And if I step out of it, then that's when I'm falling in, and I got to bring it back either to center or back within to my band that it fits in. I've got to get better about helping out. I've got to get better, back to the teaching of this feeling and getting there, getting better about helping people figure out what that is for them. Okay, it's a feeling. What's the feeling? Well, it's not like it's like a warm feeling in my stomach or my heart. Like, it's something that I feel, and I need to figure out how to better communicate that to help people find that feeling for themselves.
For me, I've been trying to figure out, we spoke earlier about that zone of genius, that if the majority of my day is in this sort of space where I feel like I'm glowing and thriving, that's how I kind of know, like, okay, I'm good. I'm in alignment. It's when in the daily sort of life, to your point, you were mentioning this routine, right? This daily sort of thing that you try, when my daily sort of existence kind of gets to a place where I'm stressed out, or I'm like tired, or I'm this, something that is not that thriving, glowing place, that's how I know that's something I need to re-examine. I need to check something because something's not, aligned. But at the same time, it's evolved, right? I'm sure it's evolved for you. It's evolved for me as well over the years, even just within months, within, 3 to 4 months, I could, I change a lot, and I could be in a different place, and I need to kind of re-examine whether the alignment is still there with who I am in that moment.
Mm-hmm. I think you said that perfectly. Surprisingly, I have nothing to add to that one.
Okay. Well, you know what? Anyways, we are nearing the end of our conversation. And so I am, okay, first of all, so grateful to have met you, the synchronicities and the paths that have led us to being able to meet and to have these conversations. First and foremost, extraordinarily grateful for that. There's not very many people, Justin, that I can have these kinds of conversations with. And so I really hope you know that. I hope you really feel like, this is every time I speak with you, I feel like there's such meaning and purpose behind what we discuss. And that means the world to me. That really lights me up. So,
well, thank you.
especially and today, you've given so much of your time both to me and to the studio, and so I just huge thank you, and I appreciate you so much. Did you have a good time? By the way,
I did. Yeah. Well, I wanted to say I'm bad about saying you're welcome. Like you're welcome, but also I wouldn't do those things and spend that time if the feeling wasn't mutual. But what's really cool about, like, you mentioned in my podcast, feeling like you wanted to be seen for you, like that type of comment and the feedback from today, and you sharing all that just now publicly, like that goes a long way, because I feel like I'm being seen. Like I put out a lot of content, and you create content. So for anybody out there who writes or publishes stuff, like I write every single day, I publish every Thursday. I don't get a lot of feedback back. And I'm not asking for it. Like people will write back and respond from time to time, but when you create and you share all this stuff that you believe so much in and you do it so frequently and you don't get a lot of feedback back, you're kind of like, well, is it resonating? Am I impacting anybody's life? So to hear that is really, really special, because that means that I'm impacting somebody's life today, and what I have to say is of value to somebody else other than myself. So thank you for sharing that, because it means way more than you probably even realize.
And that makes me happy too. By the way, I wanted to, last thing to kind of end this off with. I'm
Mm-hmm.
starting this new thing in my newsletter that I'm going to send out later today, but it was inspired, just so you know how far the impact is. It was inspired both by you and Matt Ziegler's daily emails.
Okay.
So I'm going to start a thing. It's kind of like it's an experiment. Just everyone, I don't even know. I'm just going to try it for the summer to see if I can do it. I'm going to set some parameters on. But I had this idea of just sharing these kind of daily sketches, just vignettes
Mm-hmm.
from musings and insights or whatever, just short, very, very short. But it was inspired by your daily note and by Matt's daily email, and this idea of kind of having this collection, almost like a journal of sorts,
Mm-hmm.
of my evolution as an artist, as a human being over time. And I learned that from both of you. So these
Awesome.
things are ripple effects. Sometimes we
My
don't
only,
realize it.
so
Yeah.
because I've been doing the daily note for a while now, my only piece of advice is do the daily drawing for you and then put it out. So my daily note is really I don't know what I'm gonna write each day. It's almost like I download it from source. Like here's the message for today's message. But as I'm writing it, it is more so for me first. I'm writing things to myself that I need to
Yeah.
remember or I need to know. And like they're realizations to share, but it's for me. And then I'm just sharing it, hoping that it resonates with others. And the reason I give that advice is it's really easy to create every single day when it's for you. Because when you
Yes.
start to think about, well, what do my readers want to see today, is when it gets really, really hard, because you've got thousands of readers or hundreds of readers. Like you don't know what they want. What do I feel inspired to put down? What is coming through my creativity that I'm just going to pick up a pen and just close my eyes and move my hands, and that's going to be today's sketch. Like do it for yourself and don't put pressure on it. And that's for me how I was able to build the daily cadence, because I've never done anything to that extent, and I did day 559 in a row, which is
Oh
for
my
me
gosh.
insane. Yeah. So,
Wow.
but I'm writing every day for me. So create it every day for yourself, and then share your gift with the rest of us. And that, I think, will be a good recipe for building that habit.
That's a really important point, because I know the performing part and the marketing part,
Mm-hmm.
it tends to immediately click into place. So that's such a fantastic reminder. I love that. Well, that's enormous. 500, over 500, incredible. That's amazing. So I am just gonna try it, but that's what I mean, Justin. Sometimes we don't see the influence and the impact that we have, but it's
Mm-hmm.
happening in quiet ways. So I just wanted you to know that. I'm going to
Well,
start that
thank you.
next week. So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for joining this episode of the With Grace podcast. I hope all of you got as much out of it as I did, and I will put all of Justin's information down below. So please do connect with him online. Definitely check out his daily notes; they're wonderful. And Justin, we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Grace.